Hello and welcome to the Connected Community Podcast. Today my guest is Dr. Jesseca Tighe, who has a Ph.D. in psychology. She is a career and leadership development coach, and she was a healthcare administrator for over 20 years. Today we talk about burnout, the signs and symptoms of burnout, what that looks like, how do we conquer burnout, how to create better boundaries in our work, and how to create a really beautiful work-life balance. I have a lot of friends in my life right now that are in careers that aren't satisfying to them, and they're wanting to make a shift to a totally different career. And how do we do that when we don't have that experience and we don't maybe have that education? Well, we talk about that today, how to overcome that fear. And also, if you're enjoying your career, but you're finding a lot of burnout in your job, how do we create these strong boundaries? How do we get this balance in our life so that we have this happiness and this joy in both our personal and our professional lives? I hope you'll enjoy today's podcast. And please, if you are, take a moment to give us a like, a share, and a subscribe. And I want to thank you so much for being here today. Enjoy. Hello, and welcome to the Connected Community Podcast, a place to explore possibility through mindfulness, movement, and self-discovery. Our intention is to deliver insight and inspiration while fostering conversations that are genuine, unfiltered, and deeply human. We hope you will enjoy today's episode. Hi, Jesseca. Good morning, and welcome to the Connected Community Podcast.
Hi, Nikki. Thanks for having me.
I'm excited to have you again. I'm excited about our topic because we are going to talk about burnout to career change. And I think this is something that's affected me, it's affected you, and it's affected so many people that I know, or they are not happy in their career. They want to change and they don't know how to make that shift. So let's just talk a little bit about your background. Do you want to introduce yourself and your background and how we got to this topic today?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Jesseca Tighe. I have a PhD in psychology. I worked in mental health for many years and then also worked in healthcare as an executive for many years. So I have over 20 years of experience in the healthcare field. And then I decided to go out on my own and start my new coaching business. So now I'm a career, life, and leadership coach. And I help people in particular who are burnt out, are frustrated, stuck in their career, and want a change and want to heal from that burnout and that unmanageable stress.
Yeah. And so what is burnout? Because I know we've all experienced it, and sometimes we go into burnout and then we go out of it. And then sometimes people go into burnout and they stay stuck in it for such a long time, and then they have no satisfaction with their job and their career path. So what is the true definition of burnout?
Yeah, so a lot of people don't know that burnout actually has an ICD-11 diagnosis. So that's the International Classification of Diseases. The WHO back in 2019 classified burnout as an occupational phenomenon. And there are actually three kinds. The one that most people will identify with is frenetic burnout. So that happens when people channel too much energy into their work. Regular rewards, when you do that, are not enough to compensate you. So the annual raises, the compensation, the compliments, those don't work for people anymore because they're just channeling too much energy into their work. And that's just a resentment waiting to happen. So eventually they're working at such a high intensity that they actually experience exhaustion. Then there's under challenged burnout, which is less common, but it still happens. So that happens when, think the character Milton from Office Space. That happens when you're in an under challenged environment. It's monotonous. You're not living to your full potential. You're not being challenged and you're not being stimulated. That is a form of burnout that the WHO recognizes. And then the final one is worn out burnout, and that happens from external pressures from the company or the industry where you have a period of time in your work environment where it's consistently a source of intense stress and dysfunction with no break. Think COVID in the healthcare field, for example, which I experienced. Um, Most people have a combination of frenetic burnout, which is the internal stimuli, and then the worn out burnout, which is the external pressures of our work cultures in America right now.
Yeah, and I feel like in this day and age, there's more and more pressure on us to achieve more and more. I see that especially in healthcare. I was in mental health for a long time. My husband's in the healthcare system, and it seems every year the expectations get higher and higher and higher. And I feel like there's such big burnout, especially in mental health and healthcare. And so how do we how do we manage that if we love our job or we love our career choice, but the demands are just getting to be so much that there's not a work-life balance and we're super stressed out, or maybe that stress is carrying into our home life? How do we wrap our head around all that?
Yeah, that's the difficulty, and the people that I work with are not, they're not lazy individuals. The people I work with are, overachievers. They want to do good in the world. They want to help people, but there comes a point where it crosses a line and it becomes unmanageable, and the stress becomes unmanageable. And it's not just having a high level of energy to meet a deadline or finish a project or get through a hard time. We tell ourselves that we can sustain that high level of stress all of the time, and that's just not true.
Hmm.
We also have work cultures that reward that imbalance, and they reward that kind of working at a high level. And so it's also their responsibility too, but we can also put some boundaries around our work and our life so that we can get some of that time and energy back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting because I'm in the mental health background and my husband's in the healthcare world. I feel like we spend a lot of time going into where the organizational offer workshops about stress and burnout, but it's a systemic issue. And so it's kind of ironic, actually.
It is, yeah. And I work with a lot of leaders too. What we work with in terms of leaders and industry professionals who are actually supervising folks in these high stress careers is that it's not just the employee's responsibility to come to them and say, "Hey, I'm stressed out," or I'm feeling like I need a break. Those conversations aren't always safe, and the industry is built so that it's the employee's responsibility to tell the employer those things.
Hmm.
So I really work to flip the script. I think that that's what needs to happen. This is a relationship like any other, and each person is 100% responsible for the outcome of that relationship. And
Yeah.
I think that's what needs to happen. It's not just the employee needs to say, "Hey, I need a break," because that's often not what they need. They need way more than a break. They need healing, and they need relief, and they need a different relationship with their work and career.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you get people who have these wonderful careers and they get burnt out, and then you lose them to that industry. I have clients who are nurses that are just leaving the industry altogether, and we
Yeah.
already have a shortage.
Yeah.
We really need to change the relationship that we have with work.
I think it's up to the organization too, because they can say that they value employee satisfaction and that they don't want burnout. And then they can say that, but do they really honor that? And do they really have that as a core value? Because I think sometimes it's easy to have classes and workshops and retreats saying that we value our employees, but then is the bottom line more important? Or is the health and well-being of the organization more important? And I think a lot of times the bottom line is more important.
Yeah, the bottom line is more important. That definitely happens. And also they're caught in the cycle too. they also need to create their own boundaries around work-life balance and extend that to their employees.
Mm-hmm.
That's what really needs to happen.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. My husband just had something happen outside of work and outside of our marriage. It was something in our personal life, and it kind of threw him for a loop, and it emotionally drained him. And he was saying he usually is really productive and he can get a lot done and he can mark things off of his list and he can go and he can work these long shifts. And he has, re-credentialing and all these things. It's really easy and it has flow. But then when this thing outside of work took his emotional state, kind of threw him for a loop, he said he just didn't have that energy, and work was like a slog, and getting these tasks marked off were so much harder. And I think that when we do have that balance, overall with our work-life balance, then we end up being more productive in work anyway.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's what people don't understand about burnout, is that you're not showing up effectively when you're burnt out, you're stressed out, you're not your full self. And so you need to get back to that so that you can show up in both your work and your personal life. People want to come home and have energy for hobbies and have energy for friends and family. And they don't want to be checking emails at the dinner table. They don't want to be taking phone calls or having late meetings all the time, or missing their kids' soccer games. They want that balance. And when we say work-life balance, I think we all know what that looks like. I think we can all have a pretty cohesive picture of what we want that to be. It's just that there's this disconnect on how to get there.
Mm-hmm.
Because of external pressures and also the pressure that we put on ourselves as professionals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what does burnout look like? How do we know if we've hit burnout? And how do we know if there's a path forward with the current organization that we're with, or if we need to change gears to take better care of ourselves?
Yeah. Good question. So there's always external pressures from work, but even then, there's still things that we can do to create boundaries and create the life that we actually want, regardless of those external pressures. You have to carve out some non-negotiables and some non-negotiable boundaries for your work and your life so that it doesn't creep, and it doesn't happen in a day. I think burnout is kind of a slow moving train.
Mm-hmm.
It starts for one reason, maybe continues for another, and then all of a sudden you're exhausted, which is the main symptom that I hear from people, is just, I'm exhausted. I have absolutely nothing left. It's a lot of physical stuff is what I usually hear first. They've got blood pressure issues, hypertension, they've got sleep disturbances, they've got aches, they've got pains, they don't have the energy that they used to have. They feel older than they should. And then mood-wise, they're having difficulty concentrating, their work performance is reduced or dulled, they're anxious, they might be experiencing some symptoms of depression or low-grade depression, fatigue. The buzzwords now are absenteeism and presenteeism, meaning there's an increase in illness, which was my main symptom actually from my burnout experience. And then there's presenteeism, which is that thing we were just talking about. You're there, but are you really there? Or is your mind somewhere else, or are you just so exhausted you just can't show up in the way that you really want to? And then there's job turnover, there's emotional numbness, cynicism, frustration, just a lot of negative emotions and mental and physical symptoms that people start exhibiting when they think of burnout. And then we know it has adverse effects. That's the thing that people don't realize is, because it's not a threat like our innate primitive human, an innate primitive human level, because it's not the saber-toothed tiger chasing us. It's the threat is traffic or our commute or the deadline that's in front of us or my boss wants me to do ABCD, because the threat is not right in front of our face. It's out there, it's existential. We can push it away and we choose to say, I can get through this. I can push forward. We do it to ourselves.
Yeah.
We miss those signs because we say, no, well, I can't worry about that now because I need to get this deadline done, or I need to do this, or my kid's soccer game starts at 3 and I just can't think about this right now. And it's really easy for us in our busy lives to push our mental health and our well-being aside and not see stress for what it is, which is a warning sign that we're not doing well and this isn't good for us and we really need to do something different.
Yeah. A really good sign would be, how do you feel when you have to get up in the morning? Because I think I've had jobs where I've been really excited to go in, or there's a team meeting and I'm excited to see my teammates, or there's some travel, or there's a project and I'm getting excited about it. And maybe we're not excited about going to work, but then when we get there, we're fine. And then I've had jobs too where literally I've woken up in the morning and thought, oh my God, how am I going to get through this day? Because I don't want to go in. And then even at work, having that feeling. And so that would be a really good sign, is just to look at your mood when you go in, when you wake up. And if it's persistent over time, then that's an issue.
Absolutely, absolutely. I use, when I work with clients, and your listeners can use this too, I use a scale of 1 to 10. So how are you feeling? 10 being, I'm having one of the best days at work. This is great. 1 being, they are lucky I showed up today. And where are you at in that scale? And if you're, you should really be over a 7 most days, really 8 to 10. And if you're not, then that's an issue. And then there's something wrong and we need to do something about that. What you want to do is build yourself back up so that you can show up the way that you can, the way that you want to show up at work. No one wants to go in and it's a slog, like you said, and no one wants to feel like that every single day. I did a literature review of the way people are supposed to feel at work. I'll read what a positive relationship with work looks like, and it's just 6 things.
Yeah.
So they have a sense of feeling valued at work. You value the other people at work. People say like family. The logistics work for them, the hours, the work schedule, the flexibility. They feel that the company or the boss values them. They look forward to going to work, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
And they have energy when they come home and easily engage with family, friends, and hobbies. If people listening are not feeling those 6 things, there's some things that you need to think about, and it's not just, is this the right career? A lot of people come and work with me and, they're frustrated. They've had it. They're like, I need to do something else. I need to, they're a nurse and they're like, I'm going to go start a food truck. I mean, they will literally do anything else than what they're doing. I get it. I've been there. But really 90% of people actually stay in their industry or in their current job. And I think that says something. I wasn't expecting that at all. I was expecting to work with a lot of people who wanted to change their careers. And it's not. They actually find that once they get some healing and relief and get back into balance and learn how to manage this stress, then they can make some decisions that's moving forward and moving towards something instead of moving away from something. And I think that's a big difference when you're sitting in that decision.
Yeah. So do they usually sort out what's happening in their current job, or are they sorting out what's going on with them, finding that balance, and maybe doing a parallel shift to another job?
Yeah, that's what happens. What we do is we look at finding boundaries for work, taking control of your morning, your time, and really controlling your energy and figuring out what that means and what that looks like. what people are okay with and what they're not okay with. Our work lives, especially if you're in healthcare, they're
Mm-hmm.
so busy and it's one fire after another. People don't check in with themselves and find, oh, is this okay or is this not okay? Is it really okay that I stay late? Is it really okay that I cover this shift? They don't check in with themselves. They just kind of say yes because everybody has to say yes because the machine has to keep going.
Yeah.
And that's not the
Yeah.
only answer.
Mm-hmm. I think specifically in healthcare and mental health, that there is an aspect of responsibility of self-care, because I know as a social worker, at the end of the day, after listening to people's problems, or people like maybe getting upset that I didn't think fix things fast enough, or yesterday, or before I even knew about the issue, um, that it starts to kind of layer on, layer on, layer on. My husband works with children. He sees children die. He sees children physically abused. He sees all kinds of horrendous things.
Yeah.
Um, and then, maybe a child dies, and then you just kind of move on and you finish your shift and you go in and you have a moment and you maybe talk to a coworker for 15 minutes between shifts. And then the next day you're supposed to come in and show up again. And there is this secondary trauma that I think a lot of people in a lot of fields experience. And there's no passing over that. There has to be some accountability for processing through that and finding some self-care around secondary trauma.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's huge in the healthcare field. And you're right. We in the healthcare field, we gloss over that. We just, something happens and it's terrible and tragic, but we don't take time to take care of ourselves. We just move on, and it does build. It builds inside of us, and that's what a lot of people don't realize. Those. Well, we kind of started this conversation talking about there's everyday stress, but then when something like that happens, when something big happens,
Mm-hmm.
our stress response is already increased. Our sympathetic nervous system is already jacked up because of what we do. And we had an hour-long commute to get there, and we have an hour-long commute back, and we have to do all these things. And when something big happens, it really engages our nervous system in a way that's unsafe. And then it takes a really long time for us to calm down, and we're not dealing with those emotions. And that is an issue, and it builds up and it builds up. And people do need relief and healing. And the business is not going to do that for you. As wonderful as some of our healthcare systems are, there are some great ones out there, but they're not going to take care of you in that way. You have to do it on your own. And we can talk about the nervous system a little bit. I do a lot of this in my work. So we have the two sides to our nervous system. We have our sympathetic nervous system, which that's the flight or fight response. We have our parasympathetic nervous system that tries to calm us down. And that's kind of what stress is. Stress is just a low grade flight or fight response. But because it's out there, it's your parasympathetic nervous system knocking on your door saying, hey, this isn't good for us. We really need some relief. We really need to work on this because you may have a cardiac event in 15 years. But we say, oh no, I got another shift, so I can't worry about that right now. And we push it to the side. So the first thing we really need to do is take stock and really see that stress response as the early warning system that it is, and respect it, and do some things so that we can come back to ourselves and calm ourselves down. One of the things that I do a lot with folks is just take control of your morning. Just take 10 minutes, lock yourself in the bathroom and journal. And it really sets yourself for the day so that at least you've had that 10 minutes to yourself to get that data dump, to get that stuff off your mind so that you can move forward through the day. And it does make a huge difference, even just a few minutes a day.
Yeah.
I tell people you don't have to meditate for 2 hours a day. I don't do that. I don't do self-care all day long. It really can be, it's 3 to 5 minutes, 3 to 5 times a day. is what you can do. And that will help your nervous system calm down so that it's not dysregulated starting into the day.
And it makes me think of utilizing that commute time. So instead of jamming out to music or zoning out, that could be a time going into work and leaving work to drop into some deep breathing or call a friend and ask for support, or maybe let out some tears or let out some screams or whatever it is in the privacy of your own car, and utilizing that time in a more meaningful way than just kind of going on autopilot.
Yeah, absolutely. I had an hour commute to my most stressful job before I started this business. And I would use it as a meditative time, used it to listen to podcasts and books that were actually uplifting and spiritual and things that made me feel good and completely outside of what I was doing for work. And you mentioned breathing. Breathing is huge. I work with a lot of nurses, and I was working with this one nurse who said, like, hey, I can't even go to the bathroom during my 12-hour shift. Like, I don't have time to do any self-care. So we did this breathing exercise, and it's really simple. So if you've ever had small children or been around small children, you've seen a toddler have a huge weapons grade meltdown.
Mm-hmm.
You made chicken nuggets instead of peanut butter and jelly, you monster. And they are just sniveling and snot's coming out of their nose, and they're freaking out. And then they go, well, that's your parasympathetic nervous system saying, like, bro, take a breath.
Yeah.
It's so when I'm working with this nurse, we did a lot of like micro breathing. And one of them was like, you have time to do that. You have time to go around a corner, like go to the bathroom. You have time to go to the bathroom. You really do.
Yeah.
Just go take care of yourself. Breathe for 2 to 3 minutes. Then you go back. And it does make a difference just to give your nervous system the chance to calm yourself down so that you're not running on empty. And then you will have more energy when you come home instead of just being so jacked up for work that then you come home and you've just got nothing left because you used up your battery.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, or lengthening out those exhales calms the vagus nerve, and
Yes.
and that doesn't take very long to do that too.
No, it doesn't take very long at all. It's really simple, and I do simple stuff. Like people come to me and they're like, hey, I'm doing all the things. I'm running every day. I'm a vegan, done all the conventional advice, and I don't have any relief. Stop doing that. You have an already stressed system. Adding those things actually stresses your system out more. So we actually want to pull back and do less and carve out more time for calming techniques. So it really only has 2 components. It's the mood that you want to feel, and then it's the action that you need to take to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really it. And if that's running 30 minutes a day for people, that's fine. If that works, that's fine. But you don't need to start doing that in order to relieve yourself from that burnout. We can find a movement practice that works for you that actually is calming, that we can find, a journaling or some kind of meditative practice or some kind of breathing practice that you can do in very short periods of time throughout the day. I find is where people get the most relief.
Yeah.
And then that has the added benefit of they're actually scheduling in breaks for themselves, which people aren't doing when they're burnt out and exhausted and working in these high stress environments.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk about people that are in careers that are not fulfilling them, and they feel like their passion lies outside of that. Because I have quite a few people in my life now, and I've definitely been in this place as well, where I wasn't satisfied in my career. It was providing a reasonable income. It was stable, or my education. I did all, so much education around this career, and now I'm in the career, and now the career is no longer serving me and fulfilling me. And I'm finding that my passion and my strengths lie elsewhere. Then what do? And I call that like the golden handcuffs, where the career is providing a good income. And if we jump ship, it might be to something that doesn't provide as stable an income.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard. I did it too. But it's possible. There's a lot of different ways to do some exercises around this. There's journaling. You can write some pros and cons, but I think creating some awareness around what's not working, what's really important, and what do you really want to do? Making decisions where you're moving towards something instead of moving away from something. I think getting to that place where you can do that is the most important thing you can do in order to make that decision. So making sure that you're healing from what you need to heal from, and then creating something new from yourself from that space it's just going to be so much more powerful, and it's going to be so much more rewarding, and it's going to align with what you really are put on this earth to do. So I think that that's the most important thing, is just getting to the place where you're moving towards something instead of away from something else.
But how do we do that? So we have this career, we have this dream and this passion project, and then we don't know how to move from A to B, or how to do it in a way. Maybe we have to provide for our family, provide for our kids, might even be a single mom. How do we do that when we know that what we're doing isn't fulfilling us? It's not making us happy. It's not meeting our needs. And yet this other thing that we want to move towards, we don't have clients for it. We don't have the degrees behind it.
Yeah. One of the things that I work with people on, and this is what I did with myself when I was starting my business, is I set non-negotiable hours to work on my business. So I get up ridiculously early. So from 5 a.m. to 7 a.m., that was my time. I'm working on my business. I'm doing what I need to do. And I did it 7 days a week. But I just get up early. So I'm not saying if you don't do that, then don't do that.
That would not work for me.
It's not going to work it doesn't work for a lot of people, but it worked for me. So you set aside that non-negotiable time. And then depending on what people want to do, there's tons of free resources out there on how to start businesses. I myself hired a business coach, which was the best money I've ever spent.
Yeah.
I knew I wanted to do this quickly, and I didn't know what I didn't know.
Right.
So I knew I needed that help, and I wanted to invest in myself. So that's what I did. And you create these non-negotiable hours for yourself and have those boundaries, and that's where you find that time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think so often we say we don't have time, yet if we really look at how we're spending time, we can carve out more time. I took a course recently about the energetics of time, and it made me really look at how I was using all the time and how some of it I wasn't using very wisely.
Yeah. One of the things that I like to do, and I have my own practice, and it's kind of a buzzword right now, but I do dopamine detoxes. I do that with my clients, and I have a practice with myself where you basically carve out a period of time. I say 24 hours to start, where you don't have these super stimuli. You turn off your phone, put it on airplane mode, and no TV, no fatty foods, no exercise. You sit there with a journal, maybe a book, and you just let your mind be bored and let yourself actually calm down, actually have your nervous system calm down. And now I do that a couple of hours a day, where I just tune out and shut off, so that my nervous system can actually do what it's supposed to do. Because we don't let our nervous system take care of us the way that it really can. We're scrolling, meal planning, we're commuting, we're doing all of these other things that we don't necessarily need to do. We do have time. What you're feeling is exhaustion, not time constraints. So really the two biggest things for me that made a difference in finding time is those non-negotiable boundaries and the dopamine detox.
Yeah, I love the dopamine detox.
Yeah.
I'm finding that when I'm not in alignment with my life, that I get exhausted. But when things are in flow, that exhaustion gets lifted, and then I have a lot more energy.
Absolutely. Yeah,
And so I
we
think,
all do.
yeah, I think it's important to look at that, like what's exhausting us, and if there's a way to find balance with that exhaustion.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big fan of your body knows what it needs. We just have been conditioned to tune it out, and we've been conditioned to not listen to our bodies or only listen to it if it's saying certain things. We need to get out of our own way. And what you're when you're feeling that misalignment, that's great because it's a sign that you're in misalignment.
Yeah.
So instead of seeing it as a negative, like see it as a positive, as a, oh, okay, I need to take some time for myself. I'm just gonna go, journal for 5 or 10 minutes, or I'm just gonna
Yeah.
go sit quietly. I'm gonna go have a cup of tea. I'm gonna turn my phone off for an hour. I'm gonna turn my computer off and my TV off for an hour and just let myself just do that, and
Yeah.
instead of fighting it. I think that when there's that equation, suffering equals pain multiplied by resistance, and if we just stop resisting, a lot of stuff falls
Yeah.
into place.
Yeah, I like the idea of the dopamine detox because I think when we're in that place in exhaustion, we can't think about adding anything more to our life. And I think the stimulation that we're getting from all of these external forces, whether it be TV or even when I go to the gym, the TV is like there's all these TV screens, or sometimes even in restaurants, there's all these TV screens, and just detoxing from media and the phone and all of that so that we can get back into center. Then we can find that time that we didn't have.
Right. Yeah. Then all of a sudden you have time. You have all
Yeah.
sorts of time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a dopamine detox practice where I do a full 24 hours at least once a month of no phone, no TV, no media, no rich foods. I eat bland stuff, no exercise, like just let myself be bored. And then I kind of have an intermittent fasting practice throughout the week where I just turn everything off for an hour or two several times a week. And it's
Yeah.
really made the biggest difference in my life and in my own practice.
Yeah. That sounds powerful. Yeah. And so you're saying that when somebody's wanting to make that career jump, that career shift,
Mhm.
that they would slowly shift their energy into their new practice. They wouldn't just completely jump ship, but they would slowly start to shift their energy into the other basket and get more competent in that space. Is that what you're saying?
That's safe for a lot of people financially, emotionally. It's a lot safer than just, all right, I'm quitting my job and all of a sudden I'm going to start my new business, because it does take a lot of time. If you're starting a business, or if you're getting some more education so that you can do something different, those things do take time. So it's creating that time so that you can do those things, and then you are financially stable. And then when you're going to work and it's not something you really want to do, just being okay with that's okay. You don't have to you don't have to take on extra projects, you don't have to be on another
Hmm.
committee. Just really control your energy around your work so that your main focus is really what you want to move towards instead of what you're resisting.
Yeah. And I think sometimes that feeling of stuckness goes away when we have a goal or something that we're moving towards, so that work day wouldn't be so arduous because we know that we're moving towards something brighter and better, and it won't allow us to get so sticky in it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. If
Yeah.
you're feeling stuck, then that's another sign. that there's something that's misaligned. It's a sign that, all right, we just need to redirect our energy. We need to figure out what we really want to do and then move towards that.
Yeah. And then I guess there is that scary jump and leap of faith where we've got one foot in one door, one foot in the other. The one is safe, the other one isn't as safe. And we do have to take that dive forward. And so, how do we get the courage to do that?
Yeah. Good question. So I kind of say feel the fear and do it anyway. Fear is a gift. So fear tells us that whatever we're afraid of hasn't happened yet. We haven't gotten eaten from the saber-toothed tiger. We haven't failed in our business. We haven't, whatever we're afraid of, it hasn't happened yet. So we have time. We have time to look at our resources, our situation, make a plan, and execute a plan. And so fear is actually a really good thing. Fear is a gift.
Yeah.
It's just telling you, you're going to assess your situation, you're going to assess your resources, you're going to make a plan, and you're going to execute the plan. So when you ready to hand in your notice and you're like, I don't know if I can do this. No, you've done the work. You have made a plan, you're executing the plan, and it's just time.
Yeah. And there's so much strength in overcoming fear and moving towards something that is a little bit scary for us instead of staying into that safety zone. I think even if there is failure at the end of that, there's so much growth because we haven't stayed in something that's comfortable just because it's comfortable, that we've taken a risk. And I think as we get older, we get more risk averse.
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. We do. I mean, that happens with age.
Yeah.
And also with, family and increased obligations. You can always go back if you need more
Yes.
financial resources. There's a lot of things that you can do. I've worked as a substitute teacher. I've done freelance graphic design. I've done all sorts of weird stuff.
Yes.
Just to get a little bit of income while my business is growing, and that's okay. At least I was able to do that.
Right. And worst case scenario, you can go back to a similar path that you were on before if it was a complete mistake, but most likely it won't be.
Yeah, literally the worst case scenario is I can go back to being an executive in healthcare. I can find a job tomorrow. There's plenty. But that's not going to be good for me, and ultimately not good for my family. I was working all the time. I was on call 24/7. I never had a vacation where I didn't have to pull out the laptop and work, or I was missing dinner with my son. I really wasn't there for my family either.
Well, I think sometimes we work so hard for that big paycheck to buy all these things that we don't necessarily need. And that can also be a reevaluation of what's important to us. Is it spending time with friends and family and having happiness and serenity in our lives? Or is it chasing after the nicer car or the bigger house? Because sometimes that's not worth it.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's not what's really important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, beautiful. Well, how do people reach you, and what are some of the things that you offer?
Yeah. So people can reach me. My website is Solutions for Health. So it's SOUL, solutionsforhealth.com. And then I'm also on Facebook, Jesseca with 2 E's. And I'm on LinkedIn. And I offer free consultations straight from my website, or people can email me. And I'm happy to talk with them further about how I can support them.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time and your expertise. I really appreciate our conversation today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great.
Thank you for listening to the Connected Community Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, share, and subscribe. I can be found at www.nickyyoga.com, NICKYYYOGA.com. Until I see you again next week, I hope you have a beautiful day.